Imagine a time before central heating, before smart thermostats, yet people were comfortably warm, even in the depths of winter. What if the secrets to sustainable, eco-friendly heating are hidden in the medieval past, not the futuristic present? We're diving into ancient tech that could revolutionize how we heat our homes today. Before radiators and vents, before wires carried heat with the flick of a switch, there were walls thick breathing, conscious of the seasons. There were ceilings, designed to trap warmth like the vaulted canopy of a cathedral, and floors made not just to walk on but to shield life from the frost creeping up from below. We live today with the illusion that progress is a straight line, that comfort is a product of modern invention. But what if warmth, real warmth, the kind that radiates from stone and wood without draining energy grids, was already mastered 1,000 years ago? Imagine yourself in a medieval hamlet at the edge of a frostbitten forest. It's midwinter. Snow presses against the walls like a white tide. The sun dips early behind the hills, and yet within the homes of peasants and lords alike, people live and breathe in relative comfort. The question is not how they endured winter. The real question is, how did they thrive? Begin with the bones of the house. Medieval structures weren't crude huts hastily thrown together. They were, in many cases, biomechanical responses to climate. Wattle and door walls, a lattice of wooden strips coated with a paste of clay, soil, straw, and sometimes animal dung seem primitive by today's standards. But this composition created a thick thermal envelope. In colder months, it retained body heat and deflected biting winds. In warmer months, it breathed, allowing interiors to stay cooler. These homes were not just dwellings. They were organs of the land, live with environmental logic. Then there's the stone. A single glance at a medieval castle suggests strength and defense. But those massive blocks of limestone or granite also stored heat. Once warmed by a fire, the thick stone walls would slowly release warmth over hours, even after flames died out. Some castles and manor houses were built with inner courtyards designed not for aesthetics, but for heat regulation. Wind was broken by thick curtain walls, while the open sky above allowed precious winter sunlight to enter, warming stone and soul alike. There's also the layout itself. Medieval builders didn't rely on guesswork. The orientation of homes mattered. Windows, small, narrow, and often glazed with horn or oiled cloth rather than glass, were placed strategically to catch morning light and block prevailing cold. Winds, chimneys, when they existed, were central, not peripheral, dispersing warmth evenly instead of losing it up and out. In Scandinavian and Alpine regions, builders crafted turf houses, structures whose roofs were literally alive. Layers of birch bark, sod, and grass rested atop timber frames, forming an insulative sandwich that could keep interiors several degrees warmer than the icy outside. Modern architects now call this a green roof, a marvel of sustainable design. But the Vikings, the Celts, and the Sami were already practicing it centuries ago without blueprints, without carbon calculators. Even the simplest medieval cottages had tricks modern minds might overlook. Floors were often raised slightly on stone foundations, insulating against the frost that sank into soil. Hearths were central, not only for cooking but as radiant cores of thermal energy. And let's not forget the thatched roofs, efficient in both trapping warmth and shedding moisture. Each straw interlocked like scales of armor against the elements. Thatching wasn't backward, it was biomechanically optimized. We tend to associate insulation with artificial materials, fiberglass foams, reflective panels. But in the 12th century, insulation was alive. Animal skins, woolen tapestries, and thick rugs served as movable barriers against cold. Curtains were not mere decor. They formed heat chambers around beds and doorways. In wealthier homes, heavy oak doors were hung with furs. The bedroom became a microclimate within the macro. Even in poverty, ingenuity thrived. But what if these architectural methods weren't only born of necessity? What if they were fragments of a deeper, older knowledge, something passed down not just through observation but through hidden theory? Consider the Domus de Janus Neolithic rock-cut tombs in Sardinia, designed with thermal balance in mind. Or the hypocaust systems of ancient Rome, rediscovered and mimicked in medieval monasteries. These were more than structures, they were thermodynamic systems. And here lies the deeper question. Did medieval people stumble into these discoveries through trial and error? Or were they inheriting wisdom from an older world, a world that understood how to live with nature, not against it? There are manuscripts half-burned, sealed in monastic vaults, that speak of the secretum calorist, the secret of heat. Diagrams etched in soot and ink show domed chambers with vented walls and underground flues. Some dismissed these as alchemical fantasies. Others whisper they were blueprints from a lost civilization. In the East, under Byzantine rule, early bathhouses used heat not just for pleasure but for healing. Hypocaust-like systems were maintained by engineers called thermokinites. Their knowledge was not public. Their guilds, cloaked in secrecy, passed designs from father to son, guarded as fiercely as any religious relic. And in Western Europe, Benedictine monks adapted Roman engineering to heat entire cloisters, channeling fire beneath stone floors, using water pipes, ceramic ducts, and cleverly placed vents to warm stone chambers where manuscripts were copied, and prayers whispered. These monks did not see heat as a luxury, they saw it as spiritual necessity, warmth as divine order. A freezing scribe could not illuminate God's word, a frozen pipe organ would not sing warmth, then became sacred. But what's perhaps most astonishing is how modern science, with all its sensors and simulations, is only now beginning to validate what medieval builders intuitively knew, that thickness is not inefficiency, it's stability. That earthen materials don't just protect against the cold, they harmonize with it. That homes aren't merely shelters, they're systems that breathe, that absorb and release energy like lungs, like skin, like memory. In 1997, archaeologists excavating the foundations of a 14th century Welsh manor found remnants of hollow clay tiles under the floor tubes, aligned in sequence. Initially dismissed as drainage, a closer inspection revealed soot traces and venting gaps, evidence of a primitive but functional radiant floor system. The medieval world, it seems, was more than capable of innovation. We just forgot to ask the right questions. So as we chase solar panels and smart thermostats, maybe we should also be looking backward through the ash and stone at a time when buildings were tuned to the earth itself, when warmth came not from consumption, but from design, when comfort didn't drain resources, but respected them. Beneath the glowing hearth of a medieval home, below the visible fire and the smoke-darkened stones, something ancient stirred, not merely flame, but knowledge. Knowledge once whispered by builders, guarded by guilds, and eventually forgotten. The hearth was not only the center of life, it was the doorway to heat systems more advanced than we've allowed ourselves to imagine. The medieval hearth, central and constant, was deceptively simple, but in some regions, especially in Central and Eastern Europe, there were systems that went far beyond mere open fires. The catch-all-often of the Germanic world, large ceramic stoves began appearing in the 14th century and spread like a quiet revolution. These weren't crude furnaces, they were thermal batteries, intricately tiled, multi-chambered and built to hold heat for up to 24 hours. They radiated warmth silently and slowly. Firewood burned quickly in a separate firebox, often outside the room, while smoke and hot air were guided through a maze of ceramic chambers. What emerged wasn't flame, but stored heat, exhaled into the room long after the fire had died. In effect, these were early radiant heaters, passive, elegant, and incredibly efficient. Modern engineers are only now beginning to replicate their function with thermal mass heaters, but even today, few can match the efficiency of a well-built kitchen. And this raises a sobering thought. How many other technologies have we discarded, simply because they didn't fit our narrative of progress? In the frigid Carpathians, the peasants of Transylvania used a similar technique with adobe ovens, massive clay stoves often embedded into the very walls of the home, with sleeping benches wrapped around them. These sleeping stoves were not quaint folklore, they were deliberate inventions, refined over centuries, designed to make fire a companion rather than a danger. A family could bake bread in the morning and still sleep warm by its stored heat that night. These designs didn't emerge from isolated necessity, they emerged from tradition, from something deeper. Because the further one investigates, the more one finds traces of an unbroken thread, a technological lineage stretching back through Byzantium, through Rome, and even into the Bronze Age. The hypocostrum's underfloor heating system was thought lost after the empire's collapse, but in some monasteries of 9th century Francia and beyond, stone tunnels beneath the refectories and scriptoriums suggest a revival. Carefully managed fires funneled heat into voids beneath the floors. Some of these monastic structures predate our earliest assumptions of hypocaust rediscovery by centuries. And what if they never forgot? What if these heating systems were preserved intentionally, cloaked in religious authority to keep them safe from the chaos of collapsing empires? The rule of Saint Benedict outlines not only spiritual discipline but also the importance of physical comfort. Let the brethren have sufficient clothing and warmth. Warmth was not indulgence, it was order. It was sacred continuity. In southern Europe, ancient Moorish designs also found their way into Christian strongholds. The canals, water channels cooled or warmed air depending on the season. When integrated with courtyard designs and chimneys, they created pressure gradients that circulated air, cool in summer, warm in winter. Passive geothermal energy, without ever calling it such. What modern architects now dub earth tubes or thermal chimneys were already alive in Atlantis 1,000 years ago. The Templars, those enigmatic warrior monks, may have also played a role in preserving this knowledge. In commanderies across Europe, their structures exhibit unusually advanced architectural choices. Subterranean channels, vented chapels, thermal mass walls. Some believe they inherited secret Roman or even earlier Eastern building principles. In the Château de Chinon in France, Templar ruins show signs of flue-like systems embedded in the walls, long misidentified as simple drainage. Heat, it seems, was something they understood as both power and mystery. But while the nobility and religious orders refined these systems, even common folk maintained traditions that defy our modern assumptions. In the frost-bound highlands of Scotland, crofters built blackhouses, structures that at first appear crude, filled with smoke from open hearths without chimneys. But this smoke, rather than escaping, filled the rafters, warming the thatch, smoking the timbers, preserving them, and eventually seeping out through the stones. In this way, the entire structure became a kind of living oven, storing and slowly releasing heat. These weren't accidents, they were ecological harmonies. Ancient builders didn't think in terms of machines, they thought in terms of systems. A wall wasn't a boundary, it was a sponge. A roof wasn't a cap, it was a shield. They manipulated density, angle, airflow, and moisture like modern engineers, only they used their hands, their memories, and a language of stone, straw, and earth. And then, we forgot, with the Industrial Revolution came a break. Fireplaces gave way to coal-fed furnaces, and architecture became obsessed with uniformity, speed, and profit. We traded thermal mass for thin walls and insulation foam. We forgot how to build with the seasons. We forgot how to harness the wind through venting towers, or the sun through south-facing stone. Our homes became shell-sealed and isolated from the environment, consuming energy instead of communing with it. And yet, the past waits beneath our feet. In 2015, researchers exploring medieval cellar tunnels beneath a ruined manor in Austria found curved, soot-streaked walls that funneled warm air upward into long-abandoned holes. The direction of the channels defied gravity, but made sense thermodynamically, used convection to circulate warmth through the building. The engineers who designed it understood thermodynamics without calling it that. Even more curiously, an unearthed manuscript in the Bodleian Library known only as Liber-Domus Caloris contains drawings eerily similar to modern heat flow diagrams. It was long dismissed as esoteric allegory. But what if it was literal? The title translates not as Book of the Warm House, as once believed, but more precisely as the Book of Thermal Dwelling. Its margins include notations in Greek, Latin, and Arabic suggesting a synthesis of knowledge crossing centuries and continents. Is it possible, then, that our ancestors, those we mock as primitive, knew how to build not just for survival, but for equilibrium? That the comfort we seek through gadgets and apps was once achieved through silence, thickness, and memory? The wood knew, the stones remembered, and the fire, if tended properly, didn't need to rage. It needed only to be invited into the bones of the home. As we teeter on the edge of ecological crisis, scrambling for green solutions, reinventing what was once common sense, perhaps the real innovation lies not ahead, but behind us, in cold stone warmed by wisdom, in air that moved by design, not demand, in warmth earned, not extracted. Our ancestors did not conquer the cold, they befriended it. They made peace with it through design, not domination. And as the wind howls, once more across the broken remains of their homes, those silent walls may still be whispering their secrets if only we remember how to listen. In the ruins of medieval Europe, where ivy wraps itself around cracked stone and frost seeps through the bones of what once was home, a question lingers in the silence. Did we lose knowledge, or were we taught to forget it? Walk through any abandoned abbey or long-buried hamlet, and you will not find wires or ducts. Yet you'll find alignment walls tilted just so, thresholds built low, corners angled to catch the morning sun. These were not random choices. They were inscriptions in wood and stone, a language of heat and shadow, of wind and stillness, spoken by those who understood that to master warmth was to master survival, and not only thriving without burning through the earth's veins, thriving without enslaving the future for the comfort of the present. Across Europe, ancient builders embedded what we now call passive solar principles into their homes, south-facing facades, thick thermal masses, strategic window placements, all tuned to capture and preserve the sun's warmth. In northern Italy, Lombard homes included deep lodges, roofed porches that let in winter light but shaded the interiors from summer heat. In the English countryside, longhouses housed both people and livestock, the animals' body heat rising through timber partitions and warming the living quarters. It was symbiosis, not waste. And then, there were the underground secrets. In 2008, Polish archaeologists discovered a 13th century village near Lublin where several dwellings had been built partially underground, merely for defense, but for thermal insulation. Dug into the hillside, with compact entrances and sod-covered roofs, these structures stayed temperate year-round. The same principle used in today's earthships and eco-homes had already been perfected by medieval peasants, and yet our textbooks remain silent on their ingenuity. Why? Perhaps because these truths do not serve the narrative of relentless modern progress. If the Middle Ages were a time of stagnation and ignorance, then we can justify the extraction, the disruption, the forgetting. But if that story is a myth, in fact, the past holds technologies not only equal to ours, but wiser than we are forced to confront our own arrogance. Take the subterranean warmth of the hypercaust. Modern archaeologists have found evidence, not just in Roman villas but in early medieval Islamic bathhouses from North Africa to Andalusia. Bathhouses with underground tunnels that funneled fire-heated air beneath the floors and into ceramic walls. In some cases, they created radiant warmth so evenly distributed that no part of the room was cold. Compare this to today's systems, bulky, electric, loud, centralized, and you begin to sense the elegance that has been lost. Even the materials, chosen were not accidental. In the East, Tabriz architects mixed volcanic ash into plaster for its heat retention. In Iceland, turf blocks were stacked with volcanic rock to create thermal sandwiches that retained internal warmth even in temperatures. In rural France, clay walls embedded with crushed seashells provided both insulation and humidity regulation. None of this required a single watt of electricity, so the question must be asked, if we stripped away the wires and the fuel, could we live as warmly as they did? To answer this, some visionaries are looking backward to go forward. In Cornwall, a group of eco-architects has reconstructed a 14th century manor using only medieval tools and materials. The result, a building that maintains Y-65 degrees Fahrenheit to P-18 degrees Celsius inside through winter nights without modern heating. In Slovenia, entire eco-villages are being built using ancient Slavic floor heating systems, air channels running through packed earth under clay tiles. These systems, activated by small fires in exterior stoves, need no maintenance, no wires, no AI. Just understanding this return is not nostalgia. It is integration, a refusal to dismiss the old as obsolete. But perhaps the most haunting insight comes not from stone, but from parchment, hidden in the margins of a 15th century treatise on sacred geometry found in the Czech National Library is a diagram showing a spiral corridor lined with clay bricks, buried beneath a structure's floor. Next to it, an inscription, vapor, calorem non perdit sed transformat. Heat is not lost, it transforms. This idea that heat is not merely consumed, but channeled, invited, circulated decos the oldest philosophies, Chinese feng shui, Indian Vastu, Shastra, and medieval Western geomancy all considered heat, light, and air to be spiritual currents, not just physical elements. And perhaps that's the lesson we've lost, not just how to build, but why to build, the way we did. We believed for centuries that comfort came from control, from sealing off the world, from overpowering nature. But the medieval home teaches us something different. That comfort comes from communion, from understanding the rhythms of earth, sun, wind, and fire, and designing not in opposition to them, but in harmony. This isn't romanticism, it's reality. In an age of climate crisis, when energy systems falter and the planet groans under our excess, the solutions we seek might not lie in innovation, but in recollection. The earth has always whispered its answers, we once knew how to listen. So let us remember the warmth of walls built thick with wisdom. Let us rebuild homes that hold the sun in their bones. Let us look to the past, not as a place of shadows, but as a lantern lit with forgotten fire. Because beneath the ruined hearths, beyond the silence of soot-darkened stone, something still glows. Not just memory, but possibility. Asterisk if this journey into forgotten warmth and medieval wisdom stirred something in you. There's more waiting beneath the surface. Like, share, and subscribe, and let's keep uncovering what history tried to bury, one hidden truth at a time.